Hello, and welcome back to another episode of School Daze, where we talk to creators and get their behind the scenes creative process and even learn a thing or two in a tutorial. And today I am with my girl, Shu Lin. Hey, girl, how are you doing?
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, we are so excited to have you on board. Now, so for those that are tuning in, Shu is an incredible YouTube vlogger, and she's also extremely well known for her presenting. So you can see her on BBC and other programs that she'll be announcing soon, I'm sure. So, I mean, Shu, you have made this incredible move, into presenting like pre-COVID. But I mean, obviously, COVID really did kind of turn the world upside down. And I'm sure
Mhm.
you had like lots of projects that were in let's say in production. So I mean, how did COVID affect your production schedule?
Well, I think everything has all come into a pause now, but it's also made me learn how to like pivot more and learning how to adapt to different mediums and knowing that even if you're prepared for one thing, things can change like very, very suddenly. So to have I don't know, it's given me more time to enhance skills that I needed to improve on and just think of other variables that I could work on apart from just sticking to one medium, one format.
Incredible, because I've really seen how you've been able to take a challenging situation and that turn that into this really beautiful space for you to share personal experiences. I mean, for those that have not seen her vlogs, I mean, just incredible. And that's the first time where I was introduced to you, and I just love your style, the way that you talk to your audience, and it's so engaging. But also, you feel like I always feel like you're bringing us along into the actual setting where you are. And so when like COVID hit, and I also saw this a bit of a change because you'd been doing a lot of travel, you'd move a bit more into documentary style work, working with BBC, but then you started to really bring in this whole personal vibe, like just being very like open about your life and different things that you struggled with. You were talking a lot about your relationship with your father. I mean, so what was that kind of like shift, or that what happened that got you to move into that direction?
I think it's all like for my YouTube videos, I've always wanted it to be like a reflection of my life and of the different chapters that might happen. So even though the past like couple of years have been very career focused and travel focused, I know that because a lot of what I film is based on my personality, that if I'm not feeling as upbeat and happy as I am in my usual like pre-COVID days, it was also important to reflect that because a lot of people will also be thinking about those things, feeling the same things. And I think sometimes it's quite comforting to know that others are feeling how you're feeling, or to even like voice the things that you might not have voiced out yourself. So yeah, for me, it's kind of like given me a lot more space to start exploring things that I might not have had time for before, and to explore other like topics and areas, and to build more personal connection even within my own life, but also on like a professional level, like connecting with the audience a lot more. So yeah, I've been like doing a lot more cooking, been obsessed with my air fryer. Engaged to my air fryer now, and had conversations with my father and friends and family more, because I think all of this time has made me appreciate those relationships even more and to express my appreciation a lot more, as opposed to kind of just showing very, very like surface level things as I did before.
So you made this move from YouTube to then being able to secure work with like BBC.
Mhm.
How did you make that shift?
Well, I wish I had like a grand plan, but I think it was more because I'd already created the videos and a whole series on my channel about being British Chinese and wanted to explore my heritage more. And also, I have always wanted to do more presenting jobs. So, a quote that my friend Ellie once told me that she learned before was, make the work that you want to be hired for. So over the past like 2-3 years, I've been shifting a lot more from vlogging to more presenting work and just trying to show like different styles of things that I can do. So if anyone was to go onto my channel, then it'll act almost like an online portfolio of, oh, she can do vlogging, she can do presenting to camera, she can do interview, and having all of that work showcased already. So by the time an opportunity comes up, I already have videos that have already built a following, a reaction, and different styles I can send to producers and say that I can do this and this and this. But for me, I really wanted to do more like documentary and more presenting. So that was a priority for me in terms of my work into presenting that. And then yeah, when the opportunity came, it was very, very like an easy transition from almost being like a guest to suddenly them offering like, oh, you can be that to presenter for this episode, which was incredible. Like so thankful for the opportunity. And then it kind of just went from there, really.
So, and with that said, we're talking about presenting. I would love to turn the tables over to you to talk about how to present your best self to camera. So we're here to learn, and the table is yours.
Oh, thank you. So I've already prepared like 4 different sections of 4 different styles, although it's not limited to the 4 styles. So one of them is to present to camera. So if it's on your own channel, a hosted channel, or your own social media platforms. The second style would be presenting for more like brands. So whether that is a branded piece on a guest vlogger, or it's for TV or for radio, then that also comes with a different style of how you would present. And then third one is with friends, so like an interview basis or conversations with friends. And then the fourth one is the vlogging to camera, where you're doing everything yourself and everything's filming, it's not personable. So I'll split that into 4 different sections. But the first one I want to talk about is the prep side of things, because for me, I always like to make sure everything is prepared and ready to go, which often isn't shown on camera already. So I would say like really simple things that I'm sure you've all heard of already, but to wear something you are comfortable and confident in, whether that's something that's nice and floaty, but something that makes you feel comfortable and airy, but also, I don't know if it's TMI, but if you've got like amazing lingerie that makes you feel incredible, wear that before you're doing any presenting work, because I think having that inner confidence really, really shows when you're feeling good on the inside, you're well rested, like you know that you look good that day. It really does kind of shine and reflect as well. And then a second prep work I always do before I film something is I always put on a very epic music playlist. So I'm almost like getting into character almost. So I'm always like channeling the energy that I want to reflect. So if it's more of a formal, serious piece, then I'll listen to more like epic, more serious music that will get me more into that mood and make sure that I can absorb those emotions more when I'm talking about it. If it's a very upbeat piece, then I'll listen to something like Hans Zimmer's The Holiday soundtrack, which makes me have a spring in my step. A lot of things on camera, what you feel really, really shows. So if you aren't feeling, or you don't really feel the words that you're saying, then that really holds a lot of weight, and it kind of reflects that back onto the camera. And the third thing, which is we've discussed just before the call, is to know where you'll be looking. So if you're in an interview, then you know that you need to go from looking at the guest you're speaking to the camera, or if it's a piece to camera, then also you look into the camera and the camera lens. And it's just very different ways of how you interact with the people around you, how you reflect with the camera. If it's a documentary style, then you don't want to have that personable piece to the camera and you're actually looking at the interviewer off screen. So just having that to bear in mind just before you film anything. If we go into the first section, which is presenting to camera, I've split it into 2 sections. So one is if it's for your own channel and your own platform, and 2 is if you're a guest on somebody else's platform, then even the way you like carry yourself is different. So I put for, if you're doing it for YouTube or for Instagram Live, if you're hosting a presentation, then having it a lot more personable, because you're trying to build that personal connection with the audience, and to outline 2 to 3 things that you love about yourself and to enhance those traits onto the camera itself, because it should be a reflection of who you are and an enhancement of who you are, as opposed to you trying to aspire to be somebody else that you would like to be. Because I think, especially if you're building a personal connection, having that authenticity and then being relatable really, really matters as well. So for a lot of my videos, I like to think I'm very, very upbeat and happy, but I've also got some really bad dad jokes in there. So sometimes I'll like transition into these things and I'll carry those things in. And it's those things that I feel like makes me very happy and makes me very confident, and I think reflects who I am. But if you are presenting on a branded channel, then it should be less about you and more about what you're trying to present. So you can still show your personality, but the subject matter shouldn't be about, you know, who you are, how you're feeling that day, or anything else, but actually keeping it short, succinct, and to the point, while still letting your personality shine. And sometimes when you're presenting to camera, whether that's for your own piece or whether that is for a branded channel, then sometimes you might have a script ready that's been provided to you, or something that you want to talk and refer to. And something I like to do is, if I'm given a script, then I will rewrite everything, but in my own words, and then I'll read it out loud over and over again. But also I will try and experiment with like different emphasis on how I would say a certain sentence, just to see what works for me when I play it back. Because something that you think sounds right, when it comes to playing it back, might not be the right emphasis that you want to focus on. So I think experimenting with different styles, different ways of talking, like intonating different words at the end, then it makes you a lot more aware of like how each word reflects and what each word means. Because something that I used to do was just sounded a lot more like robotic, like, hi, I'm Shu, and today we're going to present for EF London on 6 things to eat in London. And then in my head, I'm like, wow, that was great. But then you listen back and you're like, oh, I should emphasize certain things more. So you then kind of like, as a viewer, you feel like you're listening to something that's quite upbeat and something that's engaging, as opposed to someone reading off like a prompt or just reading out so like words back at you. So example would be like, hi, I'm Shu from the YouTube channel Deja Shu, and I make videos on food, travel and my life in London, and today I'll be guest vlogging for EF, showing you all of the best cheap eats in the area around your campus. And I think that in itself, even though it's the same words, different ways of intonating things and different ways of like how you pronounce different things would also have a very, very different effect. For me, I would always, like, I learn through speaking things out loud and writing things out loud. So I always try to summarize a sentence into, or a paragraph into 3 words I have to remember. And then I'll then base the whole sentence based on that one word. So when I was doing a piece for, I think, Inside Out London in March, and it was about hate crime in Chinatown, and there were certain words in there that I kept forgetting, but then I started associating a whole paragraph with that word to prompt me. So one of them was an increase of hate crime to East Asians in London, but the word I kept remembering was uptick, and as soon as I remember that word, I'm like, oh, I remember the whole paragraph that goes with that whole thing as well. So it's kind of like associating words with that paragraph, but then also writing things out in your own way, so it's a lot more easier for you to remember, as opposed to trying to talk and say other people's words.
Once you do the rewrite of script, does it have to go through any other approvals, or do they feel quite confident that it's fine?
Yeah, I think it's for them. I think it depends on what the piece is. If sometimes they might have a specific piece for you, but then it'll be very, very simple. But for things like documentary, I think it was also, they were very important to stress that this is your own experience. So we want it to make sense to you, and we want that to reflect onto the camera as well. So they're very happy with me to be like, oh, actually, I don't think I would say that word, and I wouldn't rephrase it that way. Can we change it to that? And then they'll be like, yeah, of course. And then going with it. So I think it's one of those things, like, don't be afraid to say that doesn't seem very, very natural to me, especially if it's reflective of you, to actually voice, I think it would work better, or why don't we try doing something like this and seeing how that works as well. Yeah, because for me, I think I noticed afterwards when I was presenting for other things other than my YouTube channel, that I very, very naturally have like a very happy sounding tone, but I wasn't really like, I didn't even know that until we were actually filming something. And then it was obviously a very, very negative formal piece about what's been happening. And that's how I really learn how to mean the words I say, because even if I sound very happy naturally, if I don't actually process the words and what I'm saying, then it just sounds like I'm being really happy about something I shouldn't be happy about. So I think that's why it's really important to have an idea of what you're saying, getting yourself in that mood, and actually knowing that every word you are saying to the camera has value, and that you totally absorb what you're trying to carry out and communicate with the audience, as opposed to just having it as like a paragraph of words that you're just memorizing and saying back onto the camera. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, then you'll know that I've been absolutely raving about this kitchen appliance over the past few weeks, and honestly, it has changed and enriched my life. An air fryer is essentially a compact version of a convection oven, and it works by circulating hot air over the food, and it achieves a very similar result to deep fry food without all of the oil. And I don't know about you, but I always get so nervous using a deep fat fryer, and now I can achieve very, very similar results, but it's healthier, which means I can eat even more of it, and I don't have to be worried about oil spilling everywhere. And then I think another thing that I do is also being more like emphasize your hand gestures a lot more, because you don't want to just stand there talking to camera and not move. And I think sometimes if we're nervous, then we have a natural inclination to kind of just stand there and just be like, oh, I'm just gonna talk to camera. But actually a conversation does incorporate a lot of hand gestures, incorporates, movement and things like that, and it's also a lot easier to watch as well, as opposed to kind of just standing there. So I think not to be afraid of using your hands to say something, but also you can also include things like walking to the camera, and then having the camera travel with you if you're trying to, especially for a travel piece as well. It's a lot more engaging to kind of take in that setting, so you're not just in one section all the time. But if you've got 5 different paragraphs, then you can split that to 5 different scenes and just pick up where you've left off. So then it's also a lot more engaging when there's other things happening on in the background as well.
Sometimes it's really easy to feel a bit more like, oh, I don't want to be too expressive on camera. I don't want to, especially if you're a person who really does talk a lot with their hands. And I'm always very like critical of myself when I see myself on camera, and like, oh, maybe I think I did it too big there or whatnot. But yeah, I think it's really important what you said about really trying to connect with yourself and being conscious of how you use your body and making it very natural and not necessarily performative, but just, just natural. So that is tips. And what tips do you have for maybe people who really, really struggle with that? So who are like, or maybe, you know what, even maybe this, like who maybe have like little habits, like Omo will tell you that he has a habit of biting his lip all the
Right.
time, like when he's about to speak or when he's trying to remember something, and it's so unconscious, but he does it. And we like play back the footage, and it's like, honey, you were biting your lip right there.
Yeah, yeah,
Gotta
yeah.
film it again.
Yeah, I do that because I always say okay, like okay, and then I'll talk, and it's really annoying for me to edit when every single clip starts with me going okay. So for that, I would always like try to take 3 to 5 second pause before you start an intro, just so in that 5 seconds you can really think, okay, what do I need to talk about? What do I need to say? And you're a lot more like aware of your actions because you've given yourself an allocated time to kind of like reassess yourself and get yourself ready, as opposed to going clicking the camera and then going into it. You're a lot more like you're giving time to allow for that. But also knowing that you don't have to do everything in one take, and no one knows, especially the person who's going to see the final product, they have no idea how many takes it took you to get to that piece. So I think sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves to be like, oh no, sorry, I've messed up, let's do that again. But the beauty of editing is that you're going to use the best take there is anyway. So even if you're stumbling on your words, use that as a way of like experimenting, and also a way to reflect back on, oh, what did I not like about that previous take? What do I want to do in the next one? And instead of seeing it as, something that's stopping you from achieving the final product, that's only going to build upon creating the best take possible. So it just gives you more time to work on it, to be honest, especially if it's on your own things as well. But yeah, I think it's sometimes we're so critical of ourselves that I guess is shifting that mindset into thinking, okay, well, it just means I've got more time and I've just had another take to really improve on my next one, and I can really
Right.
work on the things I didn't like in that previous one.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. And do you think that same advice applies to verbal fillers? So about the creative, sorry. So again, okay. So I know I can be the queen of verbal fillers. And I remember having a speech coach that would say every time you say an or any type of verbal okay, anything like that, that he would throw a paperclip. He had this jar of paper clips, and every time you do a verbal filler, say a verbal filler, would toss the paperclip at you when you're speaking in front of the class. And it was great because it did break that habit of mine, but that was so long ago. And so I feel like it's so easy for us to get used to using verbal fillers when we speak. It's not the best habit to have.
Yeah, I think that's something I really learned filming with BBC, because I think naturally I always say, yeah, yeah, like very supportive, especially when I'm speaking to like female friends. It's very much like, yeah, yeah, okay, and you're supporting them as they're using their points. But if you're filming an interview or a documentary, then obviously that gets picked up, and then you don't want to have that filled in space. So I've really had to learn to not only slow down, but also to really, again, think about what I'm saying, so then I'm not going into and okays to fill the space. And also, I think sometimes when we slow down, it sounds like it's really, really slowed down in our mind, but actually in person, a pause that might feel like 10 seconds in our mind, it is only about 1 to 2 seconds. And it's very, very natural to have that pause, because I think in real life, I am so excitable that I will speak about 100 miles per hour. If I'm presenting, I will now try to consciously slow down how I'm talking, think about what I'm saying. And even though in my head, it feels like someone's clicked a slow motion button, it's probably still at a very, very normal pace, especially if viewers are watching it and English isn't their first language. Is to be mindful of that actually, if you're speaking at a very, very quick and conversational pace, that might be too quick for some people, especially if it's on a screen. And actually, if you want to put a point across, you have to slow things right down, think about what you're saying, and then that will reduce the need to use like and okays to fill the space, because you're already filling that space with what you're saying.
But you did bring up the issue of language, and I know you'll be talking more about interviewing people later on. But whenever you're talking, let's say you have someone on camera and you're interviewing, and it's supposed to be quite an organic type of interview, meaning that you might have set questions, so on and so forth. And then it needs to also, you need to add that kind of organic element in. I think sometimes, do you feel that sometimes with verbal fillers that it can be really easy to be almost trying to think like, oh, what am I going to say next? And I mean, do you have tips for that?
uh,
How to kind of help with that, even though you have set questions, but you also are supposed to make it look quite natural and have questions that are not necessarily set or scripted.
yeah, that was something I struggled with at the start, because I had like set 6 questions to interview people like Ken Holm and Gok Wan for this award show, but then the actual conversation itself took focus somewhere else, and you don't want to suddenly go in and be like, oh, and also, could you also answer this thing? I always try to, if they finished off on one point, you kind of support them on that point in saying something that you're like, oh, I totally agree with you, and I can see why you said that. And interestingly, and then you can use that as like a transition into what you're going to ask by connecting those 2 points so they don't seem as blunt, especially if they're like 2 separate things or something. Then you can at least like show a supportive clause and then use that as a segue into what you want to say. So if it's something about cooking with 10 different spices or something, then I could lean up being like, yes, I fully agree. Like, also, I'm a lover of spice as well. And actually recently I just bought a kitchen appliance that actually I'm using so many spices for, whatever. And then you can actually like use that as a segue to talk about what you need to talk about.
That's such a great way to do it. I almost feel like this whole episode is really just for me. So for those that are tuning in, don't worry. I know it's just for me.
You're such a good presenter though. I love watching your videos and how you interact with guests, because it just feels like it is a conversation between friends. And I think sometimes that's what exactly it is. Like, it is just humans connecting with humans. And even though there's a camera in between or a laptop, like, the most important thing is to form that connection and that conversation as well. So as long as you've got that, and you're always asking like open-ended questions as well to allow the other person to speak, as opposed to feeling pressured into saying yes or no, then that's always going to lend itself to a great conversation. And it sometimes might even be better than what you originally planned as well, because that's also like the beauty of a conversation and beauty of interviewing people, is to hear their opinions on something.
You know, one thing that I say about the camera, I say the camera is the best listener. So
Yeah.
it's like that third person, that third friend that is listening to the conversation between, say, like you and I, but it doesn't ever say anything. It's because it's the perfect listener. It's just there to listen. So we have to be able to communicate so that it could listen and understand what we're saying.
The second segment is kind of actually transitions very, very well from speaking on camera and other people, and that's actually presenting with friends or interviewing people. And I've got 2 examples to show. So one of them is a video on how to make a travel vlog that I made with my friend Christiane from Backpacking Bananas. And for this one, the example I wanted to talk about is structuring the conversation, because I think the key difference in presenting with your friends, actually having a conversation with your friends, is a lack of structure. Because in the conversation, naturally you would just talk about every topic under the sun. But if you're filming, and also helps you with your editing as well, it's really important to actually outline in the video and with each other, let's split this conversation into 3 parts. So then naturally you will be able to lean and stick to those 3 areas, as opposed to going too off topic. So for this one, we already plan to do like 18 points or 16 to 18 points on how to make a travel video. So before, we already assigned different points to one another, so we knew exactly what we were there to talk about, whilst also taking that as like a foundation. And then you can just talk about it and talk around it, but it'll still always have that structure, and it's easy to communicate with the viewer, as opposed to just hearing a conversation between 2 friends.
Because we have quite similar shooting and editing styles, but on very different topics. So we've split this into 3 different sections. The first one's going to be all about planning. The second one's all about production, so actually going out and filming. And then the final section is going to be about editing. So after you're done with that bite, shall we begin?
Number 1. So something that I always do in the planning process of my videos is I think about what I like to watch, because if I don't even want to watch it, then I can't expect anyone else to want to watch my videos. So I like to do a lot of research by looking at other people's videos. And if they do something that I like, I'm like, okay, what have they just done there? What have they done that I really, really like? Because I want to try and take that technique and apply it to my own work.
Number 2, I would say to have an idea of what type of video that you want to make beforehand, because within travel there's so many different types of videos. You can do a travel vlog, which is a lot more personal, follow me around. You've got a travel guide, which is less about you personally, but more about the destination.
And if it's a travel guide, you're going to want to do research.
Yeah, exactly. And you need to like know exactly what you're going to say, some facts about the place, things to do.
The way you make your videos will massively differ depending on what video style you choose.
Yeah.
So you're filming, so it's really important that you do
it So if you're having, let's say you're having a conversation with a friend on camera, do you feel like sometimes it's easy to kind of get carried away with familiarity on camera, and that people can kind of lose context sometimes of what you're talking about?
So I think from my perspective, I actually really, really like that, because I like seeing that connection form, and I like to take viewers as if they're like the third friend in that situation, and that you're kind of like taking a peek inside someone's friendship, and actually you can connect with how they're interacting, especially if they've got chemistry on camera as well. Like I think that really translates well into the camera, as opposed to making it two individuals talking, and actually to embrace that, embrace the friendship and the level of friendship chemistry, and to actually have that play out on camera. And a good example of that one is when I was interviewed. A good example of that one was when I was filming with my friend Nigel, who's a Malaysian comedian based in London, and we were filming a video all about Malaysian and Singaporean food in London. But actually, that was the first time we'd ever met, and we filmed straight away together. But we had a lot of chemistry in terms of like talking and interviewing each other, and that really came across well on camera, and actually people didn't realize that was the first time we'd ever properly met each other. So I think if there's things that really, really work well, don't be afraid of having that shown on camera, because a lot of the time people will connect with it so much more.
Please invite me back, Shu. This is what Mei Mei is known for. But personally, I prefer the nasi lemak we had earlier.
If you're not used to spice or like some of the signature Malaysian dishes, then this is like an entry-level, like soft approach into that.
Yes.
Delicious. And I think it's kind of, if you love chicken, if you love rice, there's not much to not like about it, unless you don't eat meat. I think you want to turn it up a notch and have a little bit of heat, some spice, a little bit of a party in your mouth, then the nasi lemak is where you go.
Party in my mouth, always. If your only experience of Asian food is Wagamamas, go with this. But if you want something more adventurous, my parents are all back in Malaysia, right? And if one day something happens to them and I can't go back to visit, I can come here and I eat this and I'll cry when I think of them. So this will evoke memories of my childhood.
Right, Ed, time to eat.
And I remember that episode. I thought you guys knew each other for that you were definitely good friends or something, but not realizing that was like the first time you'd ever worked together. It's pretty impressive.
We were talking on Instagram for quite a few months before, just like DMs and things. So that was the first proper time we'd met up in real life, and it was straight into filming. But I think because I think it's a good thing as well to establish like common interests as well, so you can actually incorporate that into the video. So it feels like you've got something to talk about, to lean back on if you're uncomfortable and things, and just having a rough idea of what you want to talk about beforehand. So, and then just let nature. I think a good thing is just everything, just let it how it is meant to be, rather than putting too much thought on how it should look, because I think the beauty of it is, with friends, it should be a reflection of that friendship on camera. With that clip as well, a key difference, I think, with filming with friends or interview is knowing where to look on camera, because a lot of the time if you're speaking to a friend, then you want to obviously look at them and maintain eye contact because it's a conversation, but then being able to divert that back into the camera so the viewer's also part of that conversation as well, as opposed to just keeping your eyes on just one source. And it's also a lot more natural as well. If you're having a group conversation, naturally you would look around and interact with people and having eye contact. But having that eye contact with the viewer is also key, because you don't want, like you said, to alienate anyone else or make them feel like they're being intrusive into a conversation, which it might be if you're not interacting with the viewer at all. So I think it's a good time to have a conversation with your friend, look at them in the eye, but then look back into the camera as if you're inviting the viewer along with you and they're part of the conversation, as opposed to them watching you have a conversation.
And it makes it natural. You feel like there's this kind of effortless sense of connection. And I think it's one of the best ways to do it. And you guys do it really great in that one. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you. My fourth and final style for today is vlogging to camera, which is kind of very, very similar to presenting on camera on your channel. But I think vlogging is even more personable, because it is you. It's almost like when you're holding a vlogging camera, your arm is an extension of yourself, and your camera then becomes an extension of who you're talking to. So for the example I've used for this video are a few clips from a trip to Barbados I went on last year. And even though I'm still presenting to camera, I find that the things that I'm saying are a lot more personable, relatable, and a lot more descriptive, especially if it's you're vlogging to camera, so you're talking about your own personal experiences, how you're feeling, and you want to almost paint a picture for the viewers and for them to fully know who you are at that moment. So I might talk about the sunshine that day, how the weather is feeling, talking about what's surrounding me, my plans for the day. I think in that clip I was talking about how I was sleeping that night and things, and I think it's all of that really helps to set a scene, because you've got that space and that platform to really paint that picture and to like kind of really, really illustrate that story, as opposed to if it's presenting to camera, it's not about you, it's more about what you're trying to talk about. So I think it's shifting the topic of conversation, whether that the subject is about you and your experience, or you're talking about another subject that's unrelated to you, but you're just the vehicle into communicating that. So yeah, for those things as well, I'm a lot more talkative on camera. I will include personal pronouns, so things like you and we, because we want to have that inclusivity in that connection, and when you're connecting with the audience as well, as opposed to it being like, oh, I'm talking about 6 subjects and I'm just kind of here to talk about that, but it's nothing to do with me. In this way, you're really, really helping the viewer to really, really connect with your emotions and stuff as well, and also lend itself to like having a more relatable experience. And that's something I do a lot more on my YouTube, like follow me around vlogs or travel vlogs, because you want it to feel like you're taking a friend along with you to the journey, and then they're also part of the experience. You've kind of almost like taken them into your pocket and you're like, oh, this is what we're doing now. Opposed to kind of having more of a viewer and presenter relationship if you're talking about something else that isn't about you.
But right now I'm waiting outside Treasure Beach, and we're going to head over to the local market with Tom to, I'm guessing, to pick out the ingredients for tonight's 5-course dinner. I'm going to head over and I can show you what the local market in Barbados is like. Can't wait, the weather is beautiful, the sun is shining, and I'm in for a treat tonight, so it's bringing you along. Let's do this.
These look really young and fresh. But I was just thinking it looks so nice, I'm just going to grill that and put that with the pork tonight.
We are currently at Cheapside Market to try and find some extra ingredients to add to tonight's menu. So we're kind of going all around the market, and here you'll find all of the fresh vegetables and fruits. And then I think we're going to head over to the fish market after this.
And so on your vlogs, do you script them at all?
So vlogs I don't. If it's a voiceover segment, then it'll be scripted, and then I'll record that in post-production. But the actual filming itself, I think for me, I have a rough idea of the facts that I want to say about the destination and things that I want to include in what I'm saying. But everything else, I rarely script an actual travel vlog, because I want my first reaction to everything to be on camera, as opposed to doing the same thing 2 or 3 times, which you might do for like a presenting video, because it is much about like the dish and experience. But if it's a travel vlog, I want it to be about what I'm feeling at that moment, and to have like the best representation of that. So yeah, I think I very rarely, which is probably a bad thing, but I think a lot of people always ask like, do you storyboard things and not? I'm like, no, I think I just come up with like a brief shot list of what I want to create, but then when I'm talking to camera, everything else I just want it to be of that moment.
Yeah, I think that really makes sense, because sometimes I've seen vlogs that that they really do look very scripted, and I almost feel that that kind of loses the purpose of what a vlog can and should be. So I mean, of course, a vlog can be anything you want it to be, of course, but I'm definitely, my own personal preference is I tend to be drawn more towards that style that just has a bit more organic type of feeling to it. But yeah, you still have the history. You still, like you said, you have certain facts about the destination that you want to get across in different points. And so that's really quite important. In terms of different locations, are you thinking about locations that you want to shoot in, or is it also just kind of up to how the schedule is, or do you have specific things in mind whenever you're shooting?
So if it's a press trip, then normally they already have like certain spots that they'll tell you beforehand that you'll be going to. But usually, I think I always try to seek out or request, if I'm at a restaurant, for a more quieter space, especially to film, and to be aware of the equipment that I have at that moment as well. Because a lot of time, if I'm filming outside and you're in a busy market, then just having your onboard microphone isn't going to be enough. So to having a plan, okay, that's a bit I would plan like beforehand. If I know I'm going to be a busy place, then do I need to have the wind muffler so the microphone won't pick up any of the wind noises, or do I need to bring a lav mic? So then if I need to quickly film, then I've got everything all ready to go, as opposed to kind of wanting to document my experience, but at the same time I need to I need to get my microphone ready and I need to clip everything on to actually like have an idea. If I'm outside, I've got the gear, I can just click ready, click film, record, and then I'm good to go. So yeah, that'd be the prep work that I would do split the day and then to bring and fashion my camera accordingly.
Display on the Instagram page. So all we have to do is follow them and then show them the picture of you liking the picture of the special of the day, and then you can get one of the pizzas for £6. So today's special is a tomato-based chicken, chilies and basil, and it's a huge pizza. Like, this is my head and this is the size of the pizza, so definitely a good one to share between the two of you, or if you can't finish it, then save it for later. But £6 for this is a very good deal, and again, it changes every single day. I've got a beer to go with it, which is outside of £6. And Neapolitan pizza is my favourite type of pizza. I love a thin base and then a pillowy crust.
And you just touched on something I wanted to actually ask you. What is your suggested kit list for someone who, let's say, they've been shooting, they might have a camera, but they're looking a bit more to kind of amplify their voice through creating vlogs, and with hopes of maybe even getting the attention of producers? What would you say?
Well, I would say, like, for camera, anything you've got works. But I think if you're doing a lot of more like presented work and you want it to take it up a notch to a more high production, then to invest in external microphones. Even if you've got a microphone, which I've got here, a camera even. So I've got this camera here, which is the Canon G7X Mark III, and it is very much hailed as like the vlogger camera. But a good thing about this one is that you can actually add an external microphone onto the top of this. So that really helps, I think, especially if you're presenting, then you want your voice to be, the focal thing as well, because if you can't hear the person trying to speak, then they can't really present what they're trying to say. But I think the camera, if it can record, then it's great. But also, I would say one thing I would really highly recommend investing in is a lav mic that you can just clip on and just have along with you. So even if you're recording on a GoPro or your iPhone or a point and shoot camera, then you actually have that really clear audio. And I think especially if you're filming outside and travel, that really does set you apart from just using the microphone that comes with the camera, and it just sounds automatically a lot more professional.
It does. I think great sound is so needed when working with video. So yeah, those are some really great tips that you pointed out there. What would you say that in terms of price point, that I think these are always great things to be thinking about that people could be looking at, to spend?
So if you're, for me, like for a top end of thing, you can spend hundreds of pounds if you want. But if you want entry level, you can even have like the Video Mic Pro, and that starts from £50. So that's just like an attachment that you can put on your camera. You can also have one that goes into the iPhone as well, or your phone. So I would say like medium investment would be anything from £50 to £150, £200. But you can also, if you want more audio stuff, you can actually record into your iPhone as well as a memo, and then just actually use that audio. Sorry, that's my little sister.
I love it.
You can also talk into your camera and actually use that audio file as well, so that's more budget friendly. And if you can't, or you don't have the means to invest in external microphone, then don't be afraid to use a voiceover and then just putting that over the clips itself, so you don't have to worry so much about having to film everything. If you're out in location or you're out, then you can actually use that as a compilation, and then you can reflect on it and do a scripted voiceover that you can just put over the top as an audio file, and then you can just use like any microphone for that, or your phone.
Okay, so those that are tuning in, I know you are probably here. If you haven't already, I'm sure you've probably taken out a notepad. You're taking notes because you're like, Shu knows her stuff, and she does. Like, you really do. You could tell the wealth of experience that you bring to the table. And when you said that you had a friend who said, you know what, make sure that you're producing the work and shooting the type of work that you want to get hired for. Someone else told me that as well, and it's amazing how that really does shift the type of content that you're creating when you're thinking about, well, this is the kind of work I want to be doing, so I need to be creating it. And you have, obviously, you've created such a wonderful portfolio of work. And when you're looking back at your portfolio, would you say there's any projects that you've done that were quite pivotal and getting you to kind of shift into that mindset of saying, you know what, this is the type of work I need to be creating?
So there were two different types. One of them is more of a personal one, and I think I'm very big on sharing like personal experiences and vulnerabilities on camera. And it was one of them when I was speaking about my struggles being British Chinese. And I think sometimes when you're presenting on camera or you're doing things on YouTube, people get caught in a rhythm of, I don't want to show that, I want to show my best self and stuff. But actually, your best self can also be your most vulnerable self. And I think that is what makes us human, and to connect with us on like the most fundamental level is the emotions that you show and the relatable experiences that are inevitable for a lot of people as well to kind of go through. So for me, that was a really good exercise in staying true to myself and having that reflected on camera, and actually embracing the vulnerabilities and all of those feelings that are associated with being vulnerable and opening up, and actually using that as a platform to either raise awareness about something, or to talk more about a subject, or to talk about your own experience about something, because often that's what really, really helps to connect you with somebody else, and also create some really incredible conversations off the back of that as well. I think particularly with that video, I mean, that was a video that caught the eye of the BBC anyway, because they saw that and they were like, you kind of touched on a few things that we want to expand on, can we talk to you in person? And then after speaking about with them and doing a screen test, then that's kind of what created the whole documentary and being asked to present it. And I think that wasn't even me doing food videos of me talking about 6 things to eat in London, which is a presenter-led video. But I think, yeah, presenting your best self also just means staying authentically true to yourself. And that's like the good side, but also the side that we might think is bad, but it's actually fundamental into helping us grow later on. And I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to like look back on and see how you were then and how it could possibly help other people or make other people feel less alone about something. But the second thing I would say is a lot more presented stuff was when I know that I'm a rambler. So I asked my sister to be a videographer and help me to film a video in Spitalfields Market. And I think that was when I was going to talk about 5 or 6 dishes about that I want to talk about in the market. And I think that really helped me to structure and to alienate myself out, and not to think, oh, I'm going to vlog about my whole experience, but actually focus on 6 dishes, and to think more about how I'm going to describe those dishes as opposed to talk about myself and how I'm feeling, and to remove myself from the story. And then that's what made me really look into more, how would I describe food? How would I talk about the textures? What are the ingredients? And I think that's kind of was a really, really pivotal moment for me to think, oh, I can actually talk about food, and I can actually like learn more about food and reflect that onto camera, and it doesn't always have to be about me. So I think that's when I really shifted my content into talking more about like recipes and restaurants and destinations, and I'm just kind of like a vehicle for delivering information as opposed to just about me and nothing about what I'm actually experiencing.
Say that rum is a very, very big part of the culture, and actually one thing I learned as well, you also find a lot of sugarcane here as well. So it's harvested once a year, and when you boil the sugarcane at high temperatures, the byproduct of that is sugar crystals, which is also then turned into molasses, which is made into the rum. I'm extra excited for tonight now, seeing where all the different ingredients are from, and also different elements of the local market and the produce being incorporated tonight into the menu. I'm so hungry at the thought. I'm so hungry. Trying some gooseberry now, which I've never had before actually. Apparently it's very sharp.
Yeah.
Oh, it is very sharp. Just to wake you up.
You said some really key things there. You talked about removing yourself, from the narrative, and then, but at the same time, you're still the voice.
Mm-hmm.
So you're that vehicle that allows the story to, in a sense, be told, and you provide the platform for the story to be told as well. And you also just talked about like, I have to remove myself from that. Like, I need to remove myself so that the story itself can be central. Like, that is the narrative. And I think that is such a powerful thing to really focus on. I mean, and if you, I imagine that you're going to continue to take that narrative and shape and develop your career. And I mean, what would be your dream gig, let's say, in the next, I don't know, the next 1 year? I'm just going to be adventurous, say 1 year.
I'm going to manifest and make this happen, but I do really want to have a food and travel series and have each episode to be about each place, but then it'll just kind of take off like 6 months to 1 year to develop a whole, potentially TV, hopefully, series of food and travel, but also having that human connection as well, of having personal stories, because growing up in a takeaway, I know like how much love and how much effort goes into making food. And for me, I've always really loved locally run, family run restaurants. And instead of talking about all the hotspots and places that people have to go, I'd really love to create a whole series about visiting these places and meeting these people that are running these family run restaurants, and actually knowing what it's like around the world and the ways that we are all so similar, and but also at the same time celebrating the differences that we have as well. So it's a lot more about the culture and the love rather than just specific ingredients in a dish. So I'm manifesting for a TV program, food and travel.
I love it. I love it. I have a bit of a similar dream. I want like a food and travel show, an episodic, type of series. But I wanted to explore my food DNA. Gotten the DNA results from my mom. My mom did like the DNA testing, and I haven't done mine yet. I kept thinking about these stories that can be told. Going to the destinations that I had no clue were kind of written into my DNA. Exploring the food culture and talking about this whole thing about how food brings us together in such unique ways, and how in some ways it's entwined in your DNA, and then in other times you just have to explore it and discover it. Focusing in on those family stories, like the homegrown food and local family restaurants, kind of similar to you and your story with your father too. I also grew up in a family that was involved in food. They owned restaurants, and in food culture was just such a big thing in the family, and still to this day it's very much a part of my family legacy. So when I hear you talk about that, I'm like, I would tune in. And if I miss the episode, it's being recorded, and I will tell everybody about it, and they need to come see it. Need to watch it. So I think that's an incredible idea, and it should get picked up.
Manifesting it. But no, I love what you said about food DNA, because I always see that like food itself as being a language, and also it kind of helps to form like those pieces of the jigsaw that we've actually missed, that we don't even realize that we've missed. So for me, like going to Hong Kong and celebrating Chinese New Year for the first time 2 years ago, and having all of those traditional Cantonese food, it kind of brought like all of these like jigsaw pieces that I didn't know were missing, and it really helped to connect with the heritage, and of, like you said, like knowing where you're from, your ancestors are from, and actually like connecting with that culture on a much more deeper level than what can be experienced now. And it's actually knowing that all of these dishes have been created over the years, over generations, and actually you can still enjoy it now and almost taste like history.
Exactly. Tasting history and tasting change, subtle changes that have happened as dishes have been adapted, and they've had to change because of certain access, the availability and access to certain ingredients.
Oh, we should collaborate. We need to do more videos and things together once this is over.
I think so too. I see something here. We're gonna make this happen. Yeah. For all those tuning in, this was just a planning meeting. It wasn't really an episode.
We might just do a whole series of us together.
That's it. That's all. No, seriously, we'll talk for sure. Thank you so much, Shu. This was such it's powerful content, because I think with any type of educational materials or any type of content that is put across in an educational way that just adds to us being able to amplify our voices as creators, I think there's a lot of power in that. I think there's a lot of power in skill sharing, let's say. And then from someone who has so much experience and such a wealth and knowledge in the presenting space and sector, we're grateful for you coming and sharing your time with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, I've still got so much more to learn. I feel like I'm just the beginners at all of this stuff, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of amazing comments and interactions as well under the post as well. But yeah, it's always more to learn, but I think it's always important to like appreciate how far you've come as well, and that every work you do is always going to be the best work up until you create the next big thing. So I think it's like, yeah, it's a nice little mindset to have.
And you did say something really important there. You said appreciating. So for those that are looking to appreciate our creators that come on the program, we've asked creators to, one, maybe share a type of charity that maybe they are encouraging us to support, or we're also encouraging viewers to support creators. And Shu, is there anything that we should know about how to support you or support others?
For me, I know that right now in the lockdown, everyone's personal circumstances are different, and that comes into like financial means as well. So in terms of supporting others, you can always, like, even if you don't have the financial means to do so, if you follow your creators on YouTube, for example, you can always just watch a video and let the ads run out, and that's always going to help, and that costs nothing. And if you do have the financial means, then please do support to the charity that means the most to you. I don't want to put like one specific one, because I'm sure that will mean different to different people, but also support creators by purchasing their work, and just kind of giving thanks, because a lot of this work that we do online actually is a free resource as well, in terms of YouTube and blogging and Instagram. So if there is a way of supporting your favorite creators, then do so, because right now, especially in the travel space, a lot of work has been paused. So I'm sure like any small act of kindness will be very much appreciated by a lot of different creators.
Guys, we are encouraging support creators, as she was saying, and support her. She has an incredible vlog, and we're going to be linking to that below. Make sure you go check out those different episodes, allow the ads to play through. That's free, as she said, and just find ways to support creators. And again, Shu, thank you so much for your time. Again, we just want to thank everyone that's tuned in for this first season of School Daze, where we talk to creators and get their creatives behind the scenes process and also learn loads of things in the tutorials. We're so glad that you've spent your time watching School Daze. We hope to see you in season 2. See you later. Who is also a, oh goodness, sorry.